This is More Than Therapy podcast. More than therapy. This is More Than Therapy. More Than Therapy podcast. This is More Than Therapy. More Than Therapy podcast. This is More Than Therapy podcast. Hello and welcome to another episode of More Than Therapy. Today we have Miss Andrea Petrut. And though I did not pronounce her name correctly, she said I can pronounce it any way I want. So I will.
You did pronounce correctly. Hello, everybody.
Andrea, since she lost her mother to cancer when she was 11 years old, Andrea took an empowering vision, made it her reality, and became her own pillar in life, lifting herself and others on her path. Through her guidance as an intuitive life and relationships catalyst, multi-passionate, heart-centered women, visionaries find clarity, severity, and alignment with their heart and life path. Andrea is all in for a deep healing and transformation. She loves working with individuals who are ready and committed and who want to always be centered despite the inner and outer chaos. Andrea is able to guide you so you can tune into the gift of your divine feminine energy. And that's what I'll be working on today. You'll be able to quickly connect with your truth in all your relationships and lead with your heart. Andrea, thank you for coming on today's episode of More Than Therapy, where we talk about peace, love, and harmony, and why I haven't seen such things in many, many moons. And maybe you can help me come to a point of centeredness so I can obtain those once again. Yes.
Oh, thank you for this beautiful introduction. It's a big subject today, isn't it? Peace, love, harmony.
Yeah. Especially during these tumultuous times in Russia, Ukraine.
Yeah, and it's not new. All of us, or most of us, have gone through something in our lives. You talk on your show with different guests about adverse childhood experiences, all sorts of trauma that happen in childhood and adulthood, right? And in my case, for instance, it has been really hard to admit that I've been through adverse childhood experiences and trauma. And you mentioned my mom died of cancer when I was 11. It was shocking, and at the same time, I did have some time to prepare. I heard, and we heard, me and my dad discovered that my mom had cancer in the last stage 2 months before she died. We didn't know she would have 2 months, but we did have 2 months with her. So it wasn't sudden. I mentally prepared myself for it. I don't know how. One answer could be the angels talk to me, maybe. But somehow in me, I knew I could handle it. And something clicked inside my mind to the stage of, I got to do something about it. I'm going to be on my own. And unconsciously, I started finding ways to be a rock for myself. I didn't know what I was doing. All I knew, I was praying, and prayer helped me a lot. Praying and having faith. At some point, she was going through horrible pain. Morphine didn't help. And I prayed for peace. I prayed for pain relief from a religious, Orthodox book. And my prayers have been listened. One day, my dad says, "Go and bring a candle from the neighbor because your mom died." I was in shock. I don't think I really woke up from the shock and really grieved until 29 years later. That's in the same time, and this is what I shared about or I shared about in some messages to people, is I found beauty and empowerment. And I actually found my mother's death as a blessing. I remember I was telling people laughing, my mom died and I was alone. And they're like, you're supposed to cry when you say your mom died, right? But I couldn't, because I could see that the light she was, that sunshine she was in our lives, she taught me while she was alive. She became a role model. Even if we didn't share stories, like she couldn't teach me, Andrea, do this, do that. But I lived with her. So she passed on something. Her legacy is within me, in my character, and when you only have 11 years with a parent and you don't have much time to talk, what you do and what I did is see the signs. What did my mom do? Where did she take me? How did she behave? So I try to, make the image of my mom out of these experiences, and it helped me a lot because I learned so much from her just by remembering how she was.
It sounds like a beautiful place to be. And due to, one day they too will be gone. My life with my parents was complicated though, coming over here from the country where we came from. We had a lot of strain assimilating into the American culture. And at the time, my parents weren't the best parents that they could be, with their own issues regarding who they were and who they were not, or how they felt about themselves, or how they felt that things should be. My mom suffering from a debilitating mental illness and so didn't know how to deal with it, because she didn't know it was a mental illness, because in our culture, it wasn't something that you sought help for. It was something that you was usually shunned and put away for, or not recognized, what I'm saying, or pray it away instead of getting help or taking medicine. Years and years and years, all because she was suppressing a very deep, deep pain subconsciously, and it acted out consciously. And until she unfathomed and uncovered that pain, only then was she able to be free and get to what we're talking about today: peace, love, and some form of harmony.
Hmm.
For my own story, I remember when I was younger, I definitely had attributes of peace and love. Harmony, not so much. I think that's something you must get later, because life isn't gonna be that smooth sailing until you actually figure out how to navigate life appropriately. But peace and love, I mean, as rough as I grew up, I definitely remember the highlights. Even though me and my father wasn't always on the best of terms based on the things he did and the things that happened afterwards. When I needed him most, he was there. And I find that to be important. That be what you're supposed to be when you're supposed to be it. As I try to be what I'm supposed to be at all times, be what I would want to receive. Unfortunately, it's a process, especially when you're still dealing with your, for lack of a better word, shit from your past. That in some ways have you walk this path that you walk, which isn't always pretty, and sometimes there's aftermaths, and sometimes people get hurt as you're dealing with your own shit, because they're not willing to walk that journey with you to help you understand or help you get through it. You know what I'm saying? And the few and far ones that come between, we push them aside and we push them away, so they can never ever be that support that they really wanted to be. And I I grieve for that. I grieve in that all the time, because I wish I had power to rewind time back to the time in which their hands were in mine. But unfortunately, you have to have that same 2020 vision that you have looking backwards, going forward. Once you get to a point where you can have that wisdom, have that realization in your life.
Yeah. And, you know, my parents weren't perfect either. Their parents weren't perfect either. I mean, every generation, I come from Romania, and my grandparents were born at the beginning of the 20th century. Um, uh, in 1906, 1916. Sorry. And and if They went through world wars. They went through famine in the 40s, 45, 46, 47. They went through communism and the terror. Then on my father's side, they went through poverty. On my mother's side, they went through physical abuse. I mean, physical abuse and scarcity has been all over, but too many horrible things happened to some of my people. And the tension in the country for so many decades, it affected us all. And you know best, transgenerational trauma, culture trauma, and the culture of a people. Um, I think too many things affected my family, and every generation tried and did their best. I know my parents did, but it was still to the point where my father, without really knowing what he had done, good or bad, but just said to me, Andrea, just take what you want to keep from what you have learned from us and discard what doesn't serve you. Every generation is going to get better and they are going to advance. So you will advance more than we did compared to our parents. And he was right. Like, I did do that. And I noticed that they didn't know, like you say, they were going through their own shit. They didn't know how to deal with their own stuff. They didn't even know what their stuff was. And I think they're still learning. But that's the beauty of what I see in older generations or elderly, is when they do want to understand, they do want to see, they do want to make changes. They are open enough, They want to bring some peace to themselves and their families, and that's amazing.
Indeed, indeed. I know when my brother was murdered in 1995, it really disrupted any semblance of peace, love, or harmony because there was so many feelings, so many emotions wrapped up in that. He was 18 and he was murdered, and I mean, it just tore my whole family apart. A lot of finger pointing, a lot of self blame, a lot of I'm saying, anger towards the perpetrators, a lot of anger at ourselves for not protecting him or keeping him out of a lifestyle that might have contributed to his death. And even now, 25, 26 years, 27 years in July later, those things still come up in conversations. That pain still comes up. I won't even go to family reunions because I don't even want to be reminded of it, because oftentimes I blame myself, because if I didn't have him involved in gangs, if he didn't come up to the city I was at and became really gang involved, then that scenario probably would have never manifested. He might be in the city next to mine or in the same city doing something similar or something different, living his best life. Unfortunately, that did not manifest. And like I said, caused a disruption regarding the peace of my family, as well as the peace within myself, as well as the love and definitely the harmony. Probably harmony will never be obtained, unfortunately, because that's a lot of pain to let go. Some things I know a mother, a father probably can never let go, because in their minds, they're not supposed to leave this earth before their children.
Uh, you remind me here about my grandmother, my mother's mother. She she had two children, my mother and my uncle. My uncle was the alcoholic who physically abused her. Like, one day she came home with blood on her head. I was shocked, and she said very calmly that her son hit her with a pen. For me, grandparents are sacred. I was taught by my father that you don't touch your parents, you respect them, you treat them with high respect, you kiss their hands, or at least you speak nicely. And seeing that, I never accepted that this was possible. I healed after because I grew up and I understood more, but still, what I learned from her is unconditional love. And when my mom died, I realized my mom was the white sheep and my uncle was the black sheep. And when the white sheep died, I feel like my grandmother became just a shell, just a body in there, a little bit of heart and faith in God. And but 95% of her, in my imagination, was 95% of her already died because she lost the most precious thing she cared for, the most precious thing she always fought for and saved money and on all of that, for the dreams for her children and her grandchildren. Uh, so when you say, talk about parents who saw their children dying, I think of her. I think of her and how much it hurts. And I was angry when my mom died. I asked God, why did you take her and not the other guy? My uncle. Why did you let him live and hurt my grandmother till she died? And you took her, my mom, who was an angel. But life showed me that it's not how we think, and there is a meaning to everything, even if it's very painful. The experience is very painful. It brought the truth in my family, and it gave us all an opportunity. For many of us, or some of us were dependent on my mother, gave the opportunity for us to become our own pillars, to have courage and speak our truth and fulfill our dreams. For some of us, it happened. For some of us, it's never going to happen because they're too traumatized and they don't want to do the steps to commit to themselves. In terms of my grandmother, um, she kept her faith and she was not angry at all. All I could see was sadness, like deep, deep, deep sadness and continuous grieving. I don't think she ever smiled after that. I'm not sure. Maybe she smiled when she saw me. I don't even remember. I unfortunately avoided my grandmother because of my uncle. Because my uncle, after my mom died, just like you say about these emotions that come up when somebody dies, especially if she was 46, she wasn't old, right? It was his anger towards my dad because it's the blaming. Oh, my dad didn't take care of her or things like that. I it's horrible. I was in the middle. Maybe you know the feeling of loving my father very much. He is my pillar in my life. He is my friend. He's been with me all my life, and I know he loves me and he cares for me, and I also know he loved my mom. And on the other hand is um, seeing all these people who accused him and who blamed him and who had all these emotions. And I'm like, I always felt like protecting him, and I always felt there was something wrong in what people said, even if my dad wasn't perfect. Like it's that thing of pointing towards somebody else and three fingers show to you. They didn't see their own faults. They didn't see their own things, but they did see something they believed was my dad's fault, which is not true. In my mom's case, although they had some their own things in their marriage and communication, it is the person who doesn't speak and say, I don't feel well, I feel sick, or I have too many words, or whatever. Like when we don't speak, how can somebody know? uh, People don't read our minds. We have to say there is an issue. We have to cry and ask for help. She didn't. And I think this is the main thing why she disappeared so fast from our life. And my dad is not to blame. It's it's what it is.
Indeed, indeed. Letting go in order to grow is a hard concept. I spoke to somebody about that recently and came to my own realization that my growth is hindered by the inability to let some things go, some of the pain go. As in some ways, the pain was a catalyst for me to become the person I am today. But
Mm-hmm.
at the same time, that same pain keeps me from growing or going further in some ways, almost like I'm punishing myself, or I'm not good enough, or it's not for me because I don't deserve it. I guess. Now that I say it out loud, I guess that makes sense. Yeah, I guess my
It,
therapist won't have to do much work this Wednesday.
well, it's about self-compassion, isn't it? I mean, all these hurtful experiences we're going through, whether we contributed directly or indirectly, or we're victims. Um, they like the healing is asking of us to offer love and self-compassion. Dr. Kirsten Neff has a TED talk that I love so much, where she talks about self-compassion, and I went to her workshop. And especially caregivers, parents, anybody who's taking care of somebody, she talks about, you gotta be for yourself what you are for your friends. You offer them love, you say, you hold space for them, right? We need to do the same thing for ourselves. Sometimes it can be the hardest because we put ourselves down so much. I could have done this, why didn't I do that, blah 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 blah, all that that talk, that the soul suckers, like some people say, inner critic, and shaming and blaming, and it doesn't help. It doesn't help. um every time I hear you talking about your experiences, I hear the word forgiveness. Letting go. I mean, we can forgive, but forgiveness takes some steps. And every time I work with myself, and I've learned from other people, and I work with other people, the same thing comes up. Before forgiving somebody else, it's forgiving yourself. And sometimes it can be the hardest thing to forgive yourself. So people say, start with small. Just forgive something that is not related to you, something very small, and then go to bigger and bigger and bigger things. And then the last one is the thing it's so hard for you to forgive. And forgiveness also implies understanding, hearing the truth within your heart, and hearing the truth from other people. For me, for instance, I discovered communication is a problem we have in the world, because I think something, you think of something about the same situation. I'm not asking you what you think, and I'm not telling you what I think, but I'm making assumptions and judgments. You're making your own assumptions and judgments. It's normal, it's what people do. But because we're not sharing each other's thoughts, we don't give each other an opportunity to reveal what is, to put it out, give it a name. It's grief, it's anger, and work with it, right? Um, and this is what people do in therapy with the best people who can hold the space. Allow the truth to come out, so you can work with it. Like you're speaking and you're realizing things about yourself. You're like, oh, so this is my truth. Okay, I'm gonna do that in the therapy session. I've revealed more. This is what we don't do. If we had people who would try to I forget the words now. I forget what I was saying.
It's okay. It's okay. I do that all the time, sometimes even in therapy. So,
So yeah, communication. We're talking about communication. Communication. We need to communicate how we feel.
right.
If there's nobody around, it helps to speak it out. With the deepest work, I believe we need help. Like
Yeah.
all of the deep things that I've worked on myself, with myself, they always started with having a conversation with somebody who understood, who could see. And you were speaking about in the beginning about having somebody you can trust. They know, they can understand you. This is something that I missed in my life. Only later, after decades after traumatic events, I actually found somebody. But in the beginning, I saw psychologists who were not able to really read the genius in my kids or the potential in my kids, and they was dismissing what they were seeing. Was like, when I mean patients, okay, I'm looking at myself now as a patient. When we patients see that a professional and a so-called expert cannot read who I am, cannot read my feelings, cannot read my kids, and is dismissing the truth, and is just, putting a diagnosis in there just from some observations based on their own reality and perception, without actually having a basis, that is gonna turn off people from going not just to those experts but to others too. And it's disservice disservice to the people, and a disservice to the colleagues who could have helped a person. Your show is more than therapy, and I really like your approach, how you educate people and you let them know how to find the therapist that can help them, the therapies. Like, I wish everybody in the world had a source like that, especially teenagers who are bullied in schools. I have somebody in the family. I cannot hear you.
Funny thing, I couldn't hear myself. When you were talking about the psychiatrist who wasn't really able to be empathetic towards what was going on with you and your family, I could totally relate to that. One of the reasons why I became a mental health therapist, when I was in the military, I had a terrible, terrible time adjusting. I guess if you zoom out, it probably was an adjustment disorder, because being on a submarine in the Navy was way different than being on the streets of Compton. But anyway, so they diagnosed me with a personality disorder, and they put me out of the military honorably, but medically. And I just remember that I was going through something, and I decompensated when they put me. I was decompensating. I was in the midst of a decompensation when they put me out the military, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to turn. So I turned to what I know, and that was the streets, and got further involved in things that I shouldn't have got involved in. If only I got the help I needed, my life could have turned out so much better. So when I got well, when through the help of the right support, the right person in my life to get me back on track, to put me back on track, I made a commitment to be what I should have received, what I wanted to receive, what I could have received in order to have a better outcome. But it took a very, very hard road to get to where I'm at today, just based on that. I can still see that chief petty officer talking about me, disparaging comments about my culture and where I'm from and who I am as a person, and labeling me with a label that there's no possible way that I could have that diagnosis and do what I do for a living, to do the work that I do on a daily basis. But he felt fit. And I was like, how can this person who never even went to college or got a master's degree, got a licensure, make such a definitive diagnosis or definitive labeling on a person like me, which totally derailed me from a life that I could have had. You know what I'm saying? I'm probably 10, 20 years off track just based on that. And that's a terrible place to be. That's really disrupted my harmony. Now that we go back to one of the key words, because, if you could only get the help that you needed to receive, your life could be so much different. So when I work with people, I like to meet them where they're at. I like to talk to them on their level. I mean, I might not necessarily curse or anything like that, but to let them know that I'm here for you. I'm here to support you with no judgment, with no disparaging comments. You will never have a hint that I judge you in any way. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to meet you where you at, because honestly, many paths can get us anywhere. It's the path that you take to get to recovery that I'm trying to pave for you. I have a really good relationship with all my clients, and I just wish that I was a client, that I had a good relationship with the person treating me when I needed the help.
Yeah. And that's why I encourage people to find their gifts, to find their path. And especially when I see people who love to work with others, we like everybody's needed. We are a traumatized world.
Yeah,
We are a traumatized world, and generations after generation we're traumatizing each other, and it has to stop. And it's going to stop with you and me and others who are healing. And while we're healing, as you say in one of your interviews, while we're healing, we're also able to help others because we're already at least few steps ahead. And we can help somebody who is very, very low. They can barely drag themselves out of a hole.
indeed, indeed.
Um, Peace. You were talking about my work, and what we do now, me and my friend Marjorie Dietrich,
Mm-hmm.
is to help people find the power of their heart's intelligence, and just in 2-3 minutes to shift from that fight or flight response and let the mind become an observer and go down into the heart, a space of neutrality. There's no good, bad in the heart. The heart is neutral. And find, I say something maybe that's very brave, not brave, daring. You can find God within you. You go back to source. You remember who you are. Talking about what you mentioned in the beginning about how you feel. There's blaming, there's shaming, there's a lot of stuff going on in there, and you don't want to be in some environments where you would be reminded of all those thoughts coming in. Well, in that space, when you go back to yourself, to your core, you find out who you really are, and that's empowerment. It's healing, it's emotional healing. It changes your mindset, it helps you change subconscious beliefs, it helps you heal trauma. We've had people who came with deep trauma, and in a few minutes they really released and transformed a lot. Like that, there's a huge release happening with people, and people do find peace. So there are tools out there, there are people, there are therapists, there are tools. I think nowadays we have access to every kind of support, human tools, every kind of support we need to actually get ourselves back together and be not just strong, but find the peace, feel loved, and feel the love for ourselves. And like you say, move towards harmony because it's not there, but we're moving towards it inside, outside, and with each other.
Harmony. That's a foreign word to me. To be honest, I can't even say I know the definition. Please tell us, what is harmony and what does it take to obtain it? Because honestly, that's what I want for Christmas.
Uh, in my heart and in the meaning that I give to the word harmony, because it's related to music, for me, it's all of us and each of us together holding space for each other and supporting each other and sharing the love, sharing the good vibes, just holding each other in there. That's part of the harmony. Because if you are troubled by something and I found my peace, with my peace, I can help you hold a space, and together we can find harmony. This is what I believe that harmony is. Harmony is dancing with everything that is in such a way that it doesn't overwhelm us. It's not too exciting and it's not chaotic. It's a song. It's a song where everything we live inside and everything on the outside has its role and adds to the play, it's a musical note, and what we hear is harmony. That's what harmony is for me. It doesn't involve just me or just one emotion or one thought. It's the complexity of the being that I am, the being that you are, and the complexity of the connections with each other. It involves acceptance, self acceptance, acceptance of the other, accepting diversity, accepting uniqueness. It's more like acknowledging what is and making peace with it without being affected by the negative, affected by what could harm, without worrying, you know. It
Right.
could be there, a little bit of fear, of doubt. I think that's okay. It's just not giving into it.
Okay. Okay. I'm gonna marinate on that. I'm gonna marinate on that.
It's a process.
It definitely is. The work you do. Tell us about the work you do in regard to getting people to connect with their consciousness. Yes, tell us about that.
It's all going back to what I call sovereignty. And for me, sovereignty is integrity, knowing your values, knowing what you believe in, knowing what you want, what you don't want in your life, knowing what you stand for. When you have that clarity, you start building your core, you start building something very strong inside you, and you will not be pushed away by somebody else's thoughts or naming or bullying or anything. You will remember who you are based on these things, and outside things will not define you. You are going to define yourself because you don't look on the outside for creating an image about yourself. You're going to look in the inside and you're going to seek for your truth. And things change, beliefs change, circumstances change, lots of things change. But the trajectory, the structure that you build for yourself, and the vision you have in your life is going to stay on track. Even if you make mistakes, even if maybe you take on a path that doesn't feel perfectly right, that's okay. You're going to learn the lessons, you're going to gather the wisdom, and that's going to make you stronger. This is what um, stands at the core of my work, and healing trauma or supporting healing trauma is part of my work too, because I have seen through my experience and witnessing others and working with people that unless we are aware of what's deep and we unless we work with it, we cannot change our future because it's in our beliefs, it's in our subconscious, and fear, doubt, worries, lots of things come out and we will be hindered in our way. So becoming a pillar for yourself, becoming a person with that inner structure that doesn't move when things change on the outside is part of healing and discovering your truth and healing your past so you can shift the future. And it also relates to connecting with the divinity within, whether we call it God, Source, Allah, however we want to call it. For me, that's the unchanging part of us. Will always be there, whether we're suffering or not, whether we're happy or not, through harmony or disharmony. It's going to be there. And for me, that's the rock. That's the guiding light. That's what I help people get to.
Indeed, indeed. Whew. You laid a lot on us today. A lot on us. A lot on us.
It's
Hmm.
about faith, isn't it?
It's about something. Yeah.
Faith. Faith. It's about faith. Like, so for me, I don't know how you feel about it. For me, what helped me build resilience through anything was seeing God like the sun at the horizon and always moving towards that. When I put the higher power to guide my life, I can go through anything. I went through humiliation, shaming, bullying as a child, as a teenager, as a mother. I've been through a lot of shit, like you say. Not as much as you. I have to really admit, your story is like, and there are so many people like you. I'm so sorry that people go through these experiences, but I went through my own, and this is what helped me. Really looking ahead at a light in front of me, and I will not stop until I die. And that's the light I want to reach. That's the light I want to be connected to, and I'm going to find it wherever it is and wherever I am.
Mm. All right. Let's see if we can get some questions from the listening audience. All right. Why do we need clarity on our values, beliefs, and relationships?
Because, in my opinion,
Yeah.
and what I've noticed in my from my experience, it's what helps us have healthy relationships, um, live in balance, and not get ourselves into hurtful situations.
Hmm.
Once we have these clear, and cleaning up from time to time and learning what was okay, what was not okay, what do I want, what do I don't want, we're actually making space in our life for what serves us, for what really is helpful for us, and we stop the cycle of trauma for us and our families.
How can we have healthy relationships? I'll be honest with you. This question came from me.
um, it's a good one, especially when we didn't have any role models in our families, and I actually um, did and mostly didn't. We can have healthy relationships when first we look at ourselves. Honestly, I didn't do that. What I learned after going through an unhealthy relationship, or actually more, is first, who am I? Asking myself, who am I? What's my potential? Who is the person I want to become? Getting, figuring that out, listening to myself, listening to my own needs, and finding my own voice. This is, and self-love, self-compassion. This has been the best thing that I have ever done in reaching healthy relationships. Finding myself, my truth, and expressing it, because I became empowered. And what I became, I attracted in my life. And this is how I had healthy relationships, whether it was love or friendships or anything. This is what has come into my life once I made the decision, I made the shift.
Indeed, indeed. I know for myself, having healthy relationships. Well, oftentimes the relationship became unhealthy or wasn't healthy because of a lack of communication. And so I tell my clients all the time that the Achilles heel of any relationship is going to be communication. If you get fired from your job, or if the job lays you off, or the job goes under, more than likely it was a lack of communication regarding, your productivity or their financial situation. If it's in a relationship, it might be, you know, the fact that you're not feeling loved or feeling wanted, or getting your needs met, and you're not communicating appropriately, or maybe you are communicating appropriately but the communication isn't optimal because they're not hearing you, or they're ignoring you, or they're not adhering to your language, your love language. You know what I'm saying? It's not always, remember they say communication is 90% nonverbal. So I mean, you have to be able to understand that. I think sometimes it's just a lack of maturity, and a lack of, and that maturity is not so much your age or anything like that, but it's just based on, if you did not see it in your household coming up, where are you to learn those attributes? You learn it through trial and error. And unfortunately, a lot of people might get hurt or lost in the aftermath of that.
Or education, how this is how I learned, trial and error plus educating myself and reading. But it has to be a will, isn't it? Like a decision. I want to know more, I want to educate myself. That's a step further, and it needs taking ourselves out of the comfort zone. But yeah, communication is key, and it takes courage, isn't it, to speak
Yeah,
and ask and hear and listen. It takes courage to listen, it takes courage to speak. Um,
indeed,
and
indeed.
with every step, oh my gosh, I really, You are so right. I really encourage everybody to just try. Sometimes what can hurt you? You will,
Because honestly, in the background, it is hurting you anyway. So might
yeah.
as well, open up and be that. And if they
And
can't understand you, or they're not willing to understand you or work with you in regards to that, then honestly, why are you throwing so much energy at it? Let it go.
and
Let it go.
sometimes, like I've discovered, we're gonna find out that, oh, it was just in my mind. Like, they didn't even think of that. Oh, okay, so you're just gonna make an illusion go away and just make peace in a relationship just by expressing how you think and feel. And there's one more thing with that, and I'm gonna we can talk about something else if you need
Oh,
to.
you're fine. You're fine.
It's about um respect. I was afraid to say something because I was afraid of somebody else's reaction. It was not about the consequences and stuff, but it was about reaction. And
Mhm.
then over time, I learned, wait a minute, if I speak respectfully, because people think, oh, I might hurt the other person if I tell my truth. Well, think again. I mean, if you speak respectfully and you really show you care, the best thing that can happen is they get it, they feel respected, seen, valued, appreciated. Like, oh, you want to know my opinion? Oh, you see me, or that's going to be great. And the worst thing that can happen is, like you said, they won't hear you. And you realize, oh, why am I in this thing anyway? Like, it doesn't serve me, is it? Like, okay. Maybe there's a change needed.
No doubt. No doubt. Oh, another question. Here we go. Why do we need to master the art of letting go?
So we can forgive. So we can forgive ourselves. So we can forgive others. So we can bring peace to our minds and to our hearts. And peace of mind is going to come only when we get into the habit of letting go. I know it's hard. I've been doing it. I still need to let go of some things, and I will always find some things that need to be, let go of, but it helps with finding peace. And if we're thinking about the body fight or flight response, the vagus nerve, the more we let go, the more we take our brain from that state, and the more our brain is going to feel like, oh, this is a new state for me. Can I really live in peace? And once we get to that, healing can continue in deeper levels, and our life is going to change.
Indeed, indeed. I know I still have a lot of healing to do, especially as it pertains to, relationships in which ended on a bad note, current situations that are not on the right note, and of course, the grief and pain I feel as it relates to my brother's death. I know, but it's a process. It's a long, long, painful process. Because honestly, you don't even know. Honestly, letting go, you almost feel like you need that burden, or you need that punishment, or you deserve nothing more
Yeah.
other than that. So that's what it is. But in many cases, depending on what the situation was, nobody will want that pain to be on you, that hurt to be on you. They will want you to grow and be better than, I would hope. And if not, you should want that for yourself.
Um, you know, when we talk about, I want to say addiction, but let's say addiction, let's smoking. I'm just giving an example that was in my family. I realized that if you want to give up something, you got to receive something in return, especially when it comes to the body and habits. So I thought, we could give up something toxic and take in also something toxic, or we can give up something bad or toxic and taking something good. From what I hear from you, my insight came that this could be possible also with letting go. Like, we want to hold on to that thing, and I've been having these things too, where it feels good to feel that emotion, dark emotion or the pain. Like, oh, I want to keep it. It helps me feel alive in a way. I don't want to let it go. It helps me. It tells me something about me. It tells me something about my life. I feel I am alive, and that's okay. But what if? What else can we bring in our lives, in ourselves, so we can let go of a rock and bring something as big and maybe as heavy, but this time the heaviness was something that really helps us, that we can hold on to. It's like I'm giving away a rock so I can have a bear hug. A bear is heavy, right? A rock is heavy too, but the effect is one is going to help our brain and bodies relax, while the other one is going to keep us vibrating in that state. And thinking of also what you said about relationships, and thinking about people who are not alive, like my your brother, like my mother and others, right? I've discovered that the person does not have to be alive or be with you, so you can shift things. You mentioned the word consciousness. I've noticed that when we change something at the subconscious level, something releases in the relationship with that person also. One example is a guy called Vishen Lakiani. He was hooked up for a week through brain, I think EEG, and he was doing a forgiveness exercise. The idea was for them to forgive from, like I said, from the smallest thing you can forgive, and then go back towards the deepest. And one day, um, one of the people in that team said he forgave an uncle who sexually abused him 15 years or 20 years something ago, from the moment the experiment was done. 2 weeks after, it was very hard, first of all, for that person to forgive the abusive uncle. 2 weeks after, he gets a call from this uncle, an uncle he hasn't spoken ever since, and that uncle asked for forgiveness. That was for me a very huge example of what is possible. The person was not in front of him, but what he did was forgive inside, right? Just forgive inside. And this is what happened. It happened to me with other people. I forgave their reactions and the way they treated me, in some moments, in some circumstances. Because of that, because of the work with myself, I shifted relationships, and I have had peace with people who hurt me. It's amazing what forgiveness and bringing peace to yourself can do. It really brings peace to relationships also. I've lived it. I know it's possible.
What is the gift of feminine energy?
Holding space. What's your... Oh gosh. You want me to talk like that? Holding space, and bringing joy like you're doing now. Loosening up. Yeah, exactly. Loosening up, holding space, community, connection. And feminine energy is not related to females or feminine body. It's in every one of us. I love watching men, I could say men like you, and please tell me if I'm correct, who let their emotional life be vibrant, come forth, and allow themselves to feel emotions, allow themselves to follow their intuitions, because this is feminine energy also, and allow themselves to hold a community, connection, to nurturing, holding, grounding. This is also feminine energy for me. I think it's something natural. We just need to, not need to, but it would be beautiful if we could see it and allow it in ourselves as humans.
Indeed, indeed, indeed. Before we depart, would you like to give the listening audience any last words of encouragement, or tell them about anything you have going on, or how to reach you in regards to wellness and recovery, finding their conscious self, helping them, assist them get peace, love, and harmony in their lives?
My message to the audience is trust yourself, trust your heart. You already know what you need. It's just that that voice needs to be allowed to be heard, stronger and stronger and stronger, because we know when something is hurting us. We know when something doesn't serve us. It's just that we put too much emphasis on what's coming from the outside, and we're not listening to our own truth. We know when we need healing, we know when we need support. So when you find out your truth and you need help, then I invite you to muster the courage. And if you cannot go to somebody who's a stranger for you, even if they show they might be the right person for you, muster the courage to speak to somebody you love who can hold space for you. Just start with a small thing of, leaning and asking for a bit of help, and then you'll be able to grow that trust in people and do more and more and more. There are always people in this world who will help you feel safe, worthy, and will allow you to go through the healing you need. People are
Indeed.
always here for you.
Indeed. The
As
right
for
people.
me, before saying about me,
Mhm.
I love More Than Therapy. Please go to their website, the podcast, and share the knowledge and education and the support people can have there. Even outside United States, I shared it to people in Canada because this is a very, very useful resource. The interviews that you're doing are amazing. Thank you so much. And leave
Thank
feedback and reviews so they know that the work is touching people's lives. This is very important. We all need encouragement in what we do. And if you want to know more about my work and you want to try and come to some of our events to see what heart imagery is, how you can help yourself with one more tool in your life, then AndreaPetrut.ca is the website where I post events and see what's going to help you there. I'm always here to serve you. If you have any questions, you can email me at hello@AndreaPetrut.ca. Thank you so much.
Indeed. And that concludes another episode of More Than Therapy. That's the More Than Therapy podcast, available wherever you push play to listen to your favorite podcast. And if you haven't followed or subscribed, please do so. That's the More Than Therapy podcast. Be well, be great. And thank you, Andrea, for your presence today. You were a breath of fresh air. Thank you.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Indeed. And that is More Than Therapy.